So it was kind of cool to get the invite just because in my professional career, I think about your guys' audience, dads, and that's just it feels like that's always been a theme that I always want to intertwine with my professional my efforts, right? Like I've been a CPA for a long time, coming up on 15 years, and a lot of it is just numbers, right? And it's a thing, and I've used it and I've gained an expertise in the numbers side, but man, like my true passion is way beyond that. And it's been fun to be able to kind of unwind that a bit now, as I've kind of changed my professional trajectory a bit, and I have more time to do that. And so yeah, super fun to be able to be part of your guys' podcast because um, and I hadn't heard about it before, and then I hopped on and I've been listening to the back episodes.
Awesome.
And I'm like, this is great. Like these are messages that need to be heard. And it's the same stuff like that we talk, like me and my buddies talk about in the sauna, like it's this community feel. It's there's some of it's tactical stuff that we can do as dads. Some of it's, on the mental side that we can do as dads. And it's just like, man, I love this space so much. Like this is the fun stuff. This is the stuff where taking, time on a Saturday is totally worth it because it's stuff that I enjoy talking about anyways. And so I like to find those topics that you kind of have your own soapbox on. There's often times where I get going with a client and then I'm like, okay, I'll get off my soapbox because I have this passion for it, the things that I get to talk to people about. And so, but yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to talk about my professional background a little bit?
Sure. I mean, we talked a little bit. I think we announced it earlier this week. Maybe it's been a busy week. DJ's been out of town, and we've just been rolling with things. But yeah, we can talk about your background. Just what's your history as Truman? Who's Truman?
Yeah, who's Truman? So I think, yeah, my professional background actually starts when I was a kid because so my dad was a CPA and I always said, I'm not going to be a CPA. I saw his schedule and I didn't really even understand what he did ever, but I do remember oftentimes, well, we didn't go on a lot of vacations. He was really busy growing a firm, and he was taught by his dad just get in there and grind all the time. And so he was always out working and doing that. And I'm one of 5 kids. So there's like a lot of family maybe pressure to provide a lot, and so he was gone all the time. And it was funny, like me and my brother sometimes he'd be like, hey, on a Saturday, like I just got to go do something at the office really quick. So we'd go to the office with them and we'd be sitting in the car for a while and then we're like, this is boring. So then there was like a little pond area in front of his office and atrium area. And we'd go and throw rocks, or he'd like, don't throw rocks in the pond or whatever. And we'd be so bored. And it'd be like, not real quick. Right. And then he'd give us some money. We'd hop the fence and go to Carl's Jr. and get a famous star or something. It was like, well, quick turned into 2 hours, And so I'm like, I do not want to be that person, and so that profession it just felt like that was what it was. And so, but fast forward and I was like in college and I got married young and I was like, I need something that I can go to work at, and my dad's like, you should do accounting and go down that road. So I was like, I guess I'm going to do that, like, here we go. Cause I knew financially it was going to work out. I saw it worked out for my dad. And so I was like, this works, and I liked small business a lot. And so I went through the accounting program and didn't love it at all. I don't, it was just like pulling teeth, but I did like the idea of being able to help a business owner with the numbers part of it. I was like, oh, I like that. So went and I worked for a big old accounting firm in the Bay Area out of college, and hated every second of it. Working for the big, like we're talking like, it sounds sexy. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to be on the Intel account and the eBay account and Cisco and Apple. I was at Apple when Steve Jobs, when the announcement came over the loudspeaker that he passed away. And it was like, but in the end, I'm in a cubicle doing like, the worst. I don't feel like I'm making a difference at all in anyone's world, And so my dad's like, hey, come up and work with me in my firm. And so that was kind of the plan anyways. So I had gotten my CPA license at the big firm. It's kind of the process. And we just had a baby. And I was like, I got to get out of the Bay Area in California. And so we went back home, our hometown. My wife and I are both from the same small town. that's when I was like, okay, this could work. Like I'm with a bunch of like, I get to work with business owners, like hand to hand combat, in the trenches with them. It was really, really good. But I quickly learned that the schedule is really hard to have a big firm, because we always hear, tax season, right? Even people that aren't in the world know that like January to April is rough,
Mm.
And what's funny is, so the firm was still at the same office as when I grew up. Okay. And I remember like a pivotal moment for me of this, like, was I was literally like, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I think it was probably like March, 20th or something like that, like right in the thick of the tax season. And I'm walking down the steps. And at this point, I think I had 2 kids, and I'm walking down the steps of the same office where I sat and played on the steps as a kid. And I realized, oh crud, I'm turning into my dad. He's an awesome guy, but it was just a little bit realization of like, I'm imbalanced in a pretty serious way. And I was like, crap, like it scared me. Like, how'd this happen? I had this idea of what I didn't want to do, and here I am, and I'm doing literally the exact same thing on the exact same staircase as my dad. And I was like, oh no. And so that kind of freaked me out. And so I was like, I got to change this. And so I've always been pretty intentional with trying to make things different. And my dad always said, Truman, do it different. And he didn't even know what that meant or how to do it. He was just like, do it differently, And so that's been my quest, is to do it differently. And then as I learn things, it's been fun, because what's the best part about being, someone's accountant is you sit on the other side of the table with them, and they lay out all their, kind of like money documents, and money is a sensitive topic for a lot of people, and it leads to a lot of other discussions. And so that was fun to be able to like that. I love that play in that space, like we talk money, but then, I specialized in small business owners. And so oftentimes it was like, as I'm sitting there going through their documents, I'm asking them about life and family and health. And, you also see them every year, so it's kind of like an annual checkup in all these other areas. And sometimes they just like, my favorite thing to do would just take all the tax papers, put them to the side, hop up on my whiteboard and be like, hey, let's talk about like the whole big picture of your life real quick. And I'd just start, extracting information out and playing therapist a bit. And then that was like my favorite thing to do. And they would leave my office and just be like, Truman, it feels like I should like pay you for therapy, And that was like the best. Like I love helping people, because I was on the quest myself. I was just a couple steps ahead of them, to be honest. And I was learning stuff about trying to balance it all, and the pressures of society around money. And I struggled with those and still struggle with them today. And so, yeah, it's just been fun. Like, so that's like a quick fast forward through 15 years of my career. Ultimately, I said, hey, let's change the formula a bit. And in 2020, we moved from California. We uprooted everything. My wife and I, we never thought we'd leave because everyone was there, but we left to Idaho, to Boise area, just to kind of continue this financial kind of optimization, just so I could, have more time with my family and not have the pressures of higher costs, basically. And then started shifting my career. I sold, most of my interest in the firm, and so I could start helping business owners kind of implement, that whiteboard that we talked about. Like I felt always so like half baked, because then they would go and try to do it on their own, like change their equation in life, and then they'd come back a year later and it was just like same thing. And I'm like, well, I gave you the ideas, but then I had no time to help them execute. So now I have time, and I help business owners actually execute kind of this, the changes they want in their business and life. And so that's what I've been doing, building that practice, that side of things here in Idaho, and it's been really fun.
Awesome.
That's where we are now.
That's nice. I'm actually originally from Spokane, Washington, so right up there.
Yeah, just over the border. The Coeur d'Alene side. Yeah. Haven't been up there, but it's funny. I was like, oh yeah, Coeur d'Alene when I moved here. And then I looked at it, I'm like, that's like 8 hours from Boise. I'm like, that's like driving to Disneyland from Sacramento. Like, holy mackerel. That's I always thought, anyways, I'm not great at geography. So
Well, going back to what you're talking about, most dads we're told we got to grind while the kids are young. Well, we'll kind of go on to your reverse retirement. We're told we got to grind while the kids are young, so that way when they're older, you know, they have the money and we can show them, oh, well, this is how dads do it. This is how you have to go through life doing it. So with going into reverse retirement, how have you kind of flipped the script on that?
Oh man, so interesting stat. I'm a numbers guy. When you think of, and I always thought this way too. I'm like, oh, my kids, they leave home around 18-ish or whatever, typically in society. And if I live to be like 75, 80 years old or whatever, I'm like, oh, like by the time they leave high school, like I still like that's only like, you know, 15% of their time, like it didn't, I was just looking at it like that. And then I did the weighted average a few years ago. I was like, what's the weighted average of hours, right? I kind of geeked out, built a big spreadsheet, and I was like, made some assumptions and I was like, the hours spent by the time they hit 18 years old and they, graduate, you've exhausted 93% of your hours with them. And I was like, oh, what the heck? That's crazy, And I don't know why, but my mind always was just like kind of linear, like number of years, not hours. But it's so true as you think about it, right? Like, have you guys ever thought about that? Like, have you guys ever done the math or thought about like what that actually looks like?
When you kind of talk about it like that, like you kind of like, I don't see my parents very much. Like, yeah, soon you grow out, when you grow up and you move out, you're like, I just want to hang out with my friends. And, if you're married, you hang out with my wife and have fun. Like, I'm not going to hang out with my parents anymore. But yeah,
totally.
You don't think about it like that.
Go to college. You just start thinking like, oh, maybe some Thanksgiving time, maybe, it depends on how quickly you get married, like all these other things. But I was pretty conservative, and it's like literally like 93%. I was like, holy mackerel. And so I don't know. I feel like I'm a bit countercultural, to be honest. Like I've been on this just like pushback against what I feel like everything pushes into in society when it comes around money, right? Because I always have to start with the money factor just because I feel like that's what I've been around. And honestly, seeing it, because I'd be doing people's taxes that were way, way farther ahead of me in life and money. I'd be like, 25 years old or 30 years old, and I'd see hundreds of clients every year. And I just got to kind of absorb all of their lessons around money. And I got to see it firsthand. Like, and to be honest, I kind of got disgusted a little bit, like the ick from money. Like it just, everything always started with this pursuit of a dollar amount. And it just doesn't work out. Like my whole thing is like, so yeah, you talked about reverse retirement. That's kind of what the wording I use to kind of describe this concept of, I think of like the most important years as a dad for myself. And it's like, yeah, between probably 30 and 50 years old, like I think of like, I have 4 kids. And so they like, when do they need me the most, and like, when's like my chance to really lead them and teach them and be with them and all sorts of with thems. And it just feels like those are the years between 30 and 50 that everyone's like, no, you need to be accumulating money. And then you'll have time, and then you'll have everything else. I don't know why everything pushes that way. And I'm like, what if, like, and I don't have a perfect answer for this, but I'm like, what if we could literally flip the script? Like, what about we could talk to the government and just change everything and be like, we're not going to just hustle when we're young. And then we'll work later on in the years, like, what if we just don't do it like everyone says we should, right? Because everyone's like retirement, right? Everyone just thinks 65 years old. And you look at like the history of retirement, and that pension system was built in Germany. It's so outdated, right? Like the history of it, because I kind of like am so interested. Like, why do we pick a number? Like, who made that number? And it's like Germany built that in the late 1800s. They said, let's make a pension system. And they picked 65 because no one really lived to 65. It was a last resort system. And then like in 1930 something or whatever, the United States was like, hey, we want to adopt kind of a social pension system as well. And we just looked at Germany and said, let's just do their system. Okay. And that was about as much research as probably went into it. And then here we are now, and it feels like everything, I don't know if you guys have felt this, but everything starts with that number and works backwards and says like, oh, that means you have to save this much and do this. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of, it's a lot of pressure. And I don't feel like there's a lot of consideration of like the dad equation, the family equation. Like, what are we optimizing for in life, right? If we're optimizing to have a bunch of money at 65, I feel like that's what we're doing. That's the system we're living in. And it puts a pressure on a dad, especially typically, just any provider in the home, really, of okay, like this is the time. Like if you don't do it this way, something's wrong. Like, you know, you're being lazy or not a good steward or not a, you know, you're unwise. Like that's the feeling I get and that's why everyone errs on the side of like work a lot in those years. And I'm like, we got to change that messaging, change the script. And that's what I don't know. That's what I live and breathe to do now is anyone that'll give me an open ear and consider it. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. And I'm like those that are employees have a harder time, but there's still so much that can be done. My audience is particularly the business owner who's struggling with it because they have a lot, they have more pieces to control in their equation, right? But they're the kind of the whole mindset of it, and where we start on the equation path is, I think, common across an employee or a business owner.
Yeah. Well, for me, like one thing that I just had a conversation with Jasmine, my wife. We talked about like our home right now is okay. We have 3 kids. We had 3 bedrooms. So the house, like, sure, once the kids are getting older and like things get a little bit tighter, it may not be as doable, but we still might be able to make it work. And we were just talking about like, do we really need the bigger house? Do we really need the fancier things, or are we wanting to more have experiences with our kids and not get so wrapped up in keeping up with the Joneses? And you know, just like what does that number look like?
Yeah.
And if we just hit that number, like, so like, what is the number that can just keep us in our house, keep the bills paid, and then have a little bit extra so we can go have adventures and, you know, go to Disneyland or, you know, go on a trip to the lake in Colorado, which we did recently. And because we more so would rather be like that, traveling the world and exploring and seeing things with our kids versus having all the fancy things and me working, you know, 60 hours and never seeing anybody. And like, cause we decided that Jasmine's going to stay home and homeschool the kids. And so I've taken on the responsibility of providing for the house, which I'm okay with. But like, that also comes with like, if we want the fancier things, that means that I will have to work 60 plus hours
Yeah.
a week in order to get those things, which are temporary anyways. Whereas the experiences and the memories will last a lifetime. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at in the process. So it's kind of cool to hear, just kind of like not sticking to the status quo, like grinding now, and then missing, like you said, you did the numbers, 93% of the hours spent with your kids is gone by the time they hit 18. And I don't want to sit there and regret never spending time with them, because I remember my dad, there was a time where he was working 7 10s. I think it was like for 3 or 4 months. He was in construction, and
Yeah.
when he got done with the job, he didn't know when the next job would come because he was part of a union, and so he did all the work in those short months that he was on the job so that we could save. And you know, just in case like if he doesn't get a job for 6 months to a year, we're good. But then I missed all that quality time with him, and there is no going back. Once it's gone, it's gone. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's really cool. That's
Well,
what I was
good for
thinking
you,
about.
DJ. That is not a. Isn't it interesting? We have to find permission to even do that. Like what you're doing, like do it differently. Like it takes permission, and somehow it's hard to give ourselves that permission. But yeah, like my wife and I, same thing. We were in a 3-2 in California, and we started having kids, and we're like, yeah, like we'll upgrade our house size wise, but we have 3 kids. Then we got to we did the math. We're like, nah, we're good for a little while, and then like 4 kids, and it was like okay, and I told her, I said, hey, we can totally go get a bigger house. But do you want more square feet or do you want more me? And she was like, I want more you. And I was like, okay, then we have to change the equation a bit. And part of that was, let's move to Idaho and change what a monthly mortgage looks like completely, right? Like, and yeah, it's and we always go back to that because we have, a lot of friends and stuff, and it's like big houses, and I'm like, remember that conversation we had, 6 years ago, 7 years ago? And she's like, yeah, like I chose more you, and this is what it looks like, and I do have more of you than, maybe other situations of friends and stuff. And so, but you have to always go back to that because it's like the creep is there, it's like, oh man. And what I've noticed, DJ, and I don't know if you've noticed it too, but, or both of you guys, as we look around society, I feel like it's a ratchet. It's a like, if we work more hours, right? Like, so we buy some things and we work more hours, then we have very, very little time. And so then we try to like somehow buy something that will give us more time. Like we go buy an expensive trailer or an expensive something, or even maybe really expensive vacations, right? And in a way, we're just throwing more pressure onto the money part of it. And now we find ourselves working more to support those things that we bought to give us more time. And it's like, I mean, go to any type of RV storage area, and it's just, they're just, it's full of them, right? And we had this dream, and the commercials sell us like, this will give you what you want. And then, but it just tightens the money pressure more and more and more. So it's just interesting because, and then we work more. And so then we just crave those things that will give us the, the freedoms and the memories, right? And it just gets, but we get the more expensive versions of all of them because we can now, and it just gets tighter, and it's like, man, like crazy. So, so back to the experiences part, we said, we have a Honda Odyssey. That thing's like a 2006 or 7 or something like that, right? Like, we call it Dirty Mike. Like that thing has had Cheerios crunched in every crevice, like it is a workhorse though. That thing is, we love it and we hate it at the same time, but we're like, this thing is free to drive basically. Like we're doing this. So we both drive like, cars that are well below our means or whatever. In our house, like, they all get the job done though. We have to keep on reminding ourselves of that. And so one thing that led us to do is we went and lived in Hawaii for 2 months this winter as a get out of the cold. So that's, it's Idaho can get cold. Like, and it's like, let's get out of the cold. That was one of the things, but also we wanted to freeze that time that we felt like our kids were just growing so fast. Our oldest was about to go into middle school next year. Our youngest was turning 5 this year. So we're like, hey, our youngest won't drown if we turn our backs, and our oldest still wants to go. Like, this is a sweet spot. Let's take it right now. Right. So we homeschooled for 2 months. We had to unenroll them. Idaho's like, we can't, like, you have to like unenroll your kids and then come back when you're done. Like, no, like, here's some packets for learning. It was like, you're done. So like, we figured out the education piece. They weren't missing out on that. And we went and just spent 2 months, like, the hours, just so many hours, just as a family unit. And we learned so much about each other. So much about just, my wife and I had so many long discussions, and it was just really, really good. But I bring that up because, like you said, DJ, like, that experience was life-changing, not just because it was in Hawaii, but because it was different, and it definitely bucked the trend, and people were like, you're crazy. Like, and I did the math. I'm like, 2 months, what could have done on the income side, all this stuff. And it's like, but we live our life in a way that we kind of like, it's how we do it. Right. And you kind of have to draw a line around, like, there's crazy things going on outside politically and world-wise, but like, I have control for the most part what happens in my 4 walls of my home. And it's like, that's what I really want to put my effort towards. And so, yeah, I've kind of put together an equation to help dads, because that's who I love working with. The reason is because you throw a stone in that pond and it ripples into like the legacy, like their kids. Like, to be honest, I wish someone would have been there for my dad to help him make sense of like what does being a provider look like? Potentially a lot different than just financial. And challenge him and have like a community. Like I'm like, dang, that would have been awesome. I could have had my dad, and so I kind of have over the years, like, how do I tell people about this message and help them, build it? I love frameworks. I'm a sucker for frameworks. I don't know. Maybe it's the accountant in me or whatever, but I love high level things that just help me kind of make decisions. And so I've kind of come up with like this formula for what I call like true income, right? Because I have buddies, right? And I have lots of friends, and my wife will be like, oh, so and so just got this job, whatever. And I look and I'm like, yeah, I know their income, their stated W-2 amount or their business, like it's pulling in a lot of monetary income. But then I add in there like, okay, but how much time flexibility do they have? So there's kind of other parts of that. True income is not just a bank account number or an income number in this situation, but it's actually like you have to add in time, and then you have to add in health, you have to add in relationships and stress level. Now you have a complete picture of what a financial decision should be made, like a lens to use in every financial decision. And in DJ, like your example, it's like, hey, I'm not going to work 60 hours. And the world would say, then you're choosing a lower income number. And I would say, I would argue that all day long. I'd say, no, you're not, because now the time quotient is where you want it to be more. The health quotient, hopefully you have less pressure, less stress. The stress quotient's lower. The relationships is higher. The health is higher. Now you add all those together. And I think, DJ, you've chosen to optimize your true income equation in a way that matters, and it's like, oh, like I should make money decisions, not in isolation. Like, I think you should all make money decisions in a way that is, and it's very particular to your family, right? Like, I can't say this is like the easiest thing to just apply to everyone blanketly, but it definitely helps give you permission to focus on other stuff than just the monetary number, So that's kind of what I use to help. Like I had a client this last week, and he had a big opportunity come up, and he was like, hey, help me figure out a way to say no, basically, right? Like a lot of people want his time. And I drew this equation up on the board for him, and I was like, hey, like, and I had him rate himself where he was at right now. And then I was like, hey, in this new opportunity, what does that do for you for your, I know it's going to increase the M in your equation, the money part. But what about the whole equation? And he was like, like it really made him like, you mean I need to say no to this opportunity? I don't know, but you tell me, and it was just a good reflection point of like, well, how are we making our financial decisions? Do they, and I like, some people just want to optimize for money, and that's not who I like to work with. I like the ones that say, gosh, how can I do all those things? Like, how can I have a true, like, those are the people that we have to just explore with and kind of get down in there and start working through their numbers. I've also learned though, so I wrote a book. I love health. I love all aspects of that. And I believe, like, as business owners, especially, like, and dads, like, we have to sharpen our own saw, and that whole concept, the name of the book is Dude, Sharpen Your Axe. Like, so that concept of like taking care of ourselves, and then we can go out there and do more. But it was funny because I think the only people that got the book were my mom, okay, and maybe a couple of my neighbors. Like that's how successful it was. But it was a message that I wanted to share, so I did that. But I realized also in that you have to take care of that fear of the money side. You have to hit that first. Like, you do have to dig in there. You can't just say it'll all work out. Like, we're too smart for that. Our subconscious, our brain, like, we all know that there's things we have to do on the money side, like we have to be, we have to get in there and find that confidence, that peace around our money. And then it allows us to show up and really make proper decisions in the other areas. And so I'm not saying that when you optimize for things, you just say it'll all work out. No, like, you have to get in there and do all of those elements. So, if you picture the equation, like the money, the health, the time, the relationships, the stress, they all have two components, a tactical component and then a mental component. And in the money part, that's probably the deepest one that I like to jump in because that's where my expertise is. We jump in there and we define, well, you said it, DJ, the enough number. Like that's a tactical thing. Like you got to know, it's both actually. You have to know what your family's numbers are. And most people they don't. They have a gut feeling. Like I was working with a client a couple weeks ago and then I had the husband and wife pop on the call because we weren't getting anywhere when I was like, what's your monthly numbers? And actually, no, fast forward, rewind. I was in their living room talking with them and I said, hey, what's your monthly nut to crack? That's what I call it. Kind of like your family's like cash outflow. And they both kind of like him-hawed and had some numbers. And then they like looked at each other like, I don't think it's that high. And like, I think it's that, like they had different, like large discrepancy, in what they thought their monthly outgo was. And then we finally, like, man, it was like pulling teeth, but we finally got them to put together like an actual numbers, data-driven, what is it? And it was like way different than both of them thought it was, and they're like, man, I didn't realize this and I didn't realize that. And it was just like, I'd say all of us are in that situation, myself included. Like if I don't look at the numbers frequently and be like, what is my number? We just kind of like wing it, So you have to get in there and dig in there and figure out like what your money numbers are. Cause if you have any type of scarcity or fear around the numbers part, you will always err, especially business owners. I mean, everyone will err towards the side of go and get more, right? Like the caveman part of us says, that's how we provide. That's how we, go and kill it, is we like get more of this thing called money. And now we have food and shelter and we're safe. It's safety. But enough is found in the head also, not just in the bank account. Like I have clients that have way numbers wise have enough, but they're a mess. They're so stressed about money. And that's the mindset work. They need to go back and figure out like what stories do they have around their money. There's definitely stuff we got to dig into and unwind a bit. But typically when you show them numbers, you always have to start with that. Cause it's like, hey, this seems like enough. And they're like, oh, really? Like, it's just fun to dig into the numbers part of it. So you have to do that if you're going to make a decision. Otherwise, and I see spouses, sometimes they have a difference too. The one spouse is like, it'll all work out. And the other spouse is freaking out, and they're like, it's not going to work out, and that doesn't give you peace and confidence around your numbers. So however you find that, you got to dig in there. And I hate the word budget. I don't like budgeting. Like, I think back when I was in the accounting program at school and I was like, oh, this is what people should do. And I remember like being newlywed, and my wife hates the word budget now. I ruined that for her. Like it's like a cuss word in our house. Like if you want to peak stress and anxiety, just say, hey, let's have a budgeting meeting in my household. I still haven't, I ruined that. My wife has PTSD because I was like, let's optimize the heck out of this, And so now I have a different approach, but we still, we have to know our numbers, and we come up with like, our system for the numbers part. Cause you cannot ignore that part of it and just move on to everything else in the equation. You have to get it down and dirty and figure that out. But it's just, I just like having that kind of overall high principle of like, what's your true income? What's your family's true income? Cause you'll look around and you'll see people and people will try to buy themselves into the time and the health and the relationships and the stress. Like they'll throw money at those, but what's hard is then that actually makes the M part, the money of their equation, even more stressful and more pressurized. And it just throws the whole equation. It just gets worse actually. And so you can't solve those other ones directly until you figure out the money part. And so that's what I like to do. That's my expertise. And so I jump in there and I help primarily small business owners say, what does the money part look like in your life? And let's get that figured out. But through the lens of everything else, right? Like we have to not neglect everything else in your life in the process. And ultimately that equation, if we optimize it, I feel like helps the reverse retirement, right? It helps someone say, I want to do things differently, and I can do things differently. I have permission to do things differently. Because man, every commercial, back to the minivan. We were looking at getting a new minivan, just, like going to go on some road trips this summer. We're like, hey, like we got 160,000 on this bad boy and it's starting to kind of the AC only works if you do it this certain way and this button, there's like little things. And we're like, hey, let's go. Maybe it's time, right? Whatever. And like, maybe since we live in Idaho now, we'll get an all-wheel drive, cool. Like in case those, days of snow, we can drive out of the neighborhood and go to the middle school now that we're going to have to go to. We started looking at those bad boys and we're like, oh, heck no, this is crazy. They're so expensive.
So expensive.
So we just looked at it and we're like, we're going to keep this dirty Mike. We're going to keep her rolling down the road, and we're going to go put in, we did the math and gave ourselves permission to put in a few $1,000s, and just keep it going for a few more years. And it does not look as cool as our friends' new cars and stuff, but I believe in maximizing our true income equation. And that's part of it, is like, I don't have to work nearly as much, because you start doing the math. You're like, that's a freaking mortgage for 5 or 7 years or whatever people are renting, buying cars for these days. Yeah. So that's a real life example of like, every day I'm making decisions. I go back to that. Do you want that, or do you want more of me? And I have to honor the more of me. Like once I say that, like that means, making efforts to be at home more and be present. And, I love mountain biking and adventuring. And so it's like, well, I'll say no to some of those. I do more of those than anyone else I know, but also, I'm like, hey, wife, what do you want out of this equation as well? Like I have more time now. It's our equation. And so, we try to balance it out that way too.
Well, that's the American dream, right? We work, we gain money for our family, and we die, essentially. And all those cool things, we have the cool cars, the cool phones, all the cool stuff. That's what's going to make us happy. At the end of the day, it doesn't. And so,
there's no corporation that would like the reverse retirement equation to like everything pushes the other way. Mm-hmm. Everything is optimized the other way. And they've done studies, like people, so many, and these stick in my mind too. It's like, and it drives me kind of nuts, you guys, is like, they interview people who are dying. Mm-hmm. What do you regret? And we all know the answers. Like none of them say, I regret not spending time at the office. Like literally zero have said that. Okay. Yet all of us are pushed that way. Mm-hmm. Like we always err on the side of working more. Like, but every dying person says do it differently. Yet we all say no to basically their advice. Like it drives me crazy, you guys, how, and it's complicated. I get that part. And I'm trying to weave through that myself and helping others along the way, but it just drives me crazy. What side are we erring on? It's never the side of time, of presence. Mm-hmm. Like we always, because it's applauded to have more, and every influence, it feels like third party influence is the other side of it's not going to push us that way. Yep. One earns money and one doesn't earn money for them. And so, oh man, I have a lot of issue with that. And I buy stuff. Don't get me wrong. I buy stuff. And then sometimes I'm like, yeah, I bought that completely thinking it was going to do this. And it doesn't do that, and mm-hmm. I'm like, dang, I got tricked that time, all the time. But it just drives me nuts. Like, I don't know. There's just so many things that support, if you really mm-hmm. think about it, but it's not easy.
No, definitely not. And I can, definitely think about all the times that like I'll leave right on time for work. Just, all right, this is my hours, I'm leaving. And the amount of like, because you get so like, this is what's preached. Like you're getting work more, you got to put more time in. You didn't do this for the day. You should have completed it. You don't leave it till tomorrow. So all the anxious feelings that you get when you leave on time, because, you're like, I got 8 hours in this day. I'm going to do all I can in this 8 hours. And once it's done, I'm clocking out. That's what you pay me for, especially when people are on salary, because people on salary, they think, oh, you can stay a little extra. I don't have to pay you extra. I pay you a set amount. And so like that's abused in corporate America all the time. So you get all these like, they try to guilt you into staying and, oh, you didn't complete this or whatever. But at the end of the day, I look at it and say, you know what? I see people in leadership and whatever, like there's somebody that I work with like 12, 13, 14 hours is a normal day and they have kids at home and a wife. And I'm like, you do realize like that, like my heart breaks for the kids and my heart breaks for
Yes.
the spouse, because like they don't get you're gonna you're gonna get to the end of your life, you're gonna be like, I regret not spending more time with them, and they're sitting there, I want more time with dad. Like I just had to go on a work trip, and I like, if I didn't have to go on it, there would be no going on it, but it was for a partner, and like to build a relationship with them, it was something that needed to be. And so I was like, okay, I'll go. And I live in Vegas, and I had to travel to West Palm Beach, Florida. So completely opposite ends of America. Um, but I remember like my kids, my oldest, he's 4 going on 5. And he was like, Dad, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. And then when I got home, like the past couple of days, he's like, Dad, I really missed you. And so like my heart breaks for people who do it on a regular, consistent basis, spending time at an office where like, if given the opportunity and they need to cut budget, they'll cut you and they don't want to think anything of it.
Yeah.
Like, but you gave them the time, even though like your kids and stuff will value your time more than a corporate America job will. So,
Yeah. And that goes for corporate America job. That goes for, well, and you think about 2 things that came to my mind was like, who developed the 8 hours? Like, once again, freaking, how is it that like, that's just the perfect number? It's like, no, what the heck? Like, but it's like, that's the way we've built everything around, and it's cool. Some of their countries don't have that as much. Like I've had, clients that go work in parts of Europe, and there's parts of Europe that like are like, no, like, do not work past a certain number. Like they're much more like, go home, don't take work. America definitely has a hustle. Like, this is what we do. This is a badge of honor, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, just the whole start of that whole thing. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm like, wouldn't it be nice, I know there's a lot of hardships, but like, if you're like an old school farmer way back in the day, and it was like, those guys, like, they hustled, but there's seasons to it. And there was a lot of downtime. Like, that guy has a piece of grass in his mouth and he's just looking at the sky, like, good for him, in my mind, I think that. But like, there's just so many things that we've done to make the pressure. But then that coworker, we all had, I've been part of businesses and stuff, and people are choosing to stay later. And it is sad. It's like, I get in their mind. And what's also hard is the more you're away and it becomes a kind of habit, that's your brain is always telling you survival, right? And the survival equation is do what you did yesterday because it worked. You didn't die. So that is what you should do today. And then if that works out, then tomorrow, well, what you set a pattern in your life, and now all of a sudden parts of your brain are saying, this is what you need to do. And it feels life or death if you don't. And so we're kind of, having to go against some of our primitive programming a bit to say, nope. So the modern work environment definitely is fueled by, it scratches the itch for sure of our primal like survival instincts. But also and I've noticed this too, once you're away more and more, you kind of forget how awesome it is to be at home. Yeah. You kind of don't enjoy it as much when you are at home for a lot of reasons. And that's the sad part too. It's like they have nothing, they've pushed everything else out, and now everything is built around work. And we do that. We find ourselves in seasons where it's like, you're just too tired. Like home feels, and then what's hard is relationships, right? Require time and investment. When you don't give it that, now those relationships are struggling. Kids, spouse. Yeah. Now you don't want to be home because the relationships aren't good. And it just ratchets even harder. And it's like, you know what? Well, what I do, then you start feeling like failure at home. So then you're like, well, where I am not a failure? In the money game. I'm going to go do that game. And it's like, oh, now it's a spiral. And so I feel bad because when you're in it, and then, but what's awesome is you could always flip the script, right? Like once you do start reversing it, you start going, I want more of home. Like this was fun. This was awesome. Like this feels good when you invest on those fronts. you start feeling like a success, and then you want to spend more time at home or at the gym or whatever, those other elements of the equation. But it's very uncomfortable. People always go, oh, wouldn't it be nice? And it's like, well, it's actually pretty uncomfortable taking time off or working out when it's not something you normally do. It's easier to go to work, is what I'm saying. I'm there. I've been there so many times. It's easier to just walk out the door and go to work.
Uh-huh.
And no one can question it really. It's like, oh, yeah, I got to work. And but I think we can fall onto that as a crutch, like go in there and then it's like, then you throw some money at the equation and but there's lots of reasons why the money one we always just want to go optimize that one, and it's stealing from our kids because
Sure.
the decade I always just look at like the most important decade of my life is no question the decade when my kids are all in that sweet spot, like gosh. And most of my clients are not struggling to make ends meet. That's a different message. It's a different battle for sure. But pretty much every one of my clients is just fine if they would just sit there and look at it. And maybe, I don't know, when we think about that money equation though, guys, like, because we oftentimes add the pressure to ourselves, through our financial decisions, like you said, bigger house or whatever. What would you guys say, maybe some of your audience, some of the things that we do to add pressure financially to, to the equation, money pressure? What are some of the things we spend money on that you've seen or in your own lives or your buddies' lives or, those in your community? Like, what do you think is like a typical spend for your audience that just actually makes things worse on the money side?
Well, I think it's that norm. Like everyone wants the new car. Like kind of like we were talking about. Everyone wants that new car, or everyone's like, well, I've got to do something. So let's go to Disneyland, or let's go to this. Let's do this. And let's do X, Y, Z. When you could have a lot of fun just going to a park or just hanging out at home with your family instead of just let's go blow $500-$600 and go into a theme park. When at the end of the day, theme parks are stressful as heck because you got to buy this, you got to buy this, you got to wait in line for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, and I think they choose Disneyland because it doesn't take much thought, right? It's like, well, it's a guaranteed home run on that side. And I'm going to reward myself. I've been gone all the time. A little bit of maybe like, now I'll go and do that because it's already kind of pre-packaged for me. We went to Disney, and I'm not saying Disneyland's bad, but should it be our default? I don't think so. But we went last year and we did 3 days at Disneyland. And with flights, and I shopped like crazy on flights. Like, we were sitting in cattle car section. It felt like flights, hotel, Disneyland, food, $7,000 for 3 days. Whoa,
Right.
That's crazy. It's stupid. Like, it stressed me out just every time we bought a dang anything, a churro. We make our kids, it was like, we got one churro 4 ways. We're splitting this thing 4 ways, right? Like, and I'm like, this is crazy. And I look and it's packed and I'm like, this is interesting. This is, so I'm not saying it's bad, but we should be challenging and every family's different, but we should be optimizing for the true income equation. That's why I think it's like, then there's less regret. There's so much less everything, but it's not what society rewards. And you're going to feel like it's going to feel wrong. It's going to feel wrong because everyone else is not doing it, because it's not easy to be proactive that way. But it also should give everyone hope, all the dads hope, like, hey, I might not have a big M in the equation. However, the other elements I feel really good about. And so it should not put pressure on you. It's not an equation that makes you feel worse or have more to do. I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
But it should give us like this, heck yeah, like I can optimize those elements, or I can make that work better. Or, hey, my true income equation, like DJ, your example, right? Like, we're staying in this home, but I have more time and I have other things that I'm really excited about. It should give you a feeling of I'm doing what I want to do and I'm doing it right in quotes, because everyone's different. But like for you, DJ, like you can then look around and say, oh, I'm doing it right. And that, I think, and that being part of a community, that people, other dads that have this mindset and this struggle and this journey is really important too, because not everyone's geared this way. And when you talk to someone who is not geared this way, it's like water and oil. They're like, what are you doing? Or they say, wouldn't it be nice? And oh man, I'm always like, I'll tell you why yours is, oh yeah, I have so many wouldn't it be nice? I'm like, everyone can have a hot, man, like you can change it, but you're just choosing other things. That's what I always think of. I'm like, wouldn't it be nice? Like you could do it too. Anyone can do it really, like their own true income equation. Like everyone can do it. That's what I think everyone can do it. If they want it though, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's not a normal thing for sure. But I also know you guys, I don't have to wait till I'm 65 to see how many situations go up in flames, their plans, retirement, goodness. Like I can't tell you, and we're all getting to that point. I think I'm turning 40 this year. How old are you guys?
I am 30. I'm at 34.
Yeah, 33.
Okay, so you still got some time. It hits quick though, as far as you start looking ahead and seeing people in your life, parents and other people that are quote unquote hitting retirement, like I've arrived or whatever. And their health is a big pile of, it's horrible. Their kids don't need them anymore. They're gone doing their own thing, and yet now they're like, okay, I'm here. This is what I've worked for all these years. And it's like to go to doctor's appointments and to not do anything, and to get cranky watching the news bites all day, and like this spiral of being worried about everything. Like this is what I see. Like, tell me, people always think it's gonna be like this commercial of like a yacht and a sailboat and everyone's healthy and just doing their thing. And it's like, that is not what 65 looks like. In a situation where you burn yourself out and you do not optimize for the true wealth equation. That is not what it looks like. And what's awesome is I have been able to see it hundreds of times without having to go through it myself, sitting on the other side as a CPA. And I've seen the saddest things. I've seen multiple times spouses just kill themselves maybe in their business together. Oh, they get, they're gearing up. They get this huge RV. This one example, they get this huge RV. They're so excited to travel the United States. And they're like, oh, if we just work a few more years and grind, then we'll be able to do this. And I remember getting the call like, hey, Truman, so-and-so passed away. And I have this, unexpectedly, I have this big RV. We've had it for like a month. I don't even know how to drive it. What do I do? And I was like, so sad, but I've seen that so many times. Like everything is going to be great if we just somehow in their mind, they've been conditioned that everything will be great if they can just work and accumulate. We call it the accumulation method in life, where boom, 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 they just start stacking money in some retirement account, right?
Mm-hmm.
And somehow we optimize everything in life for that, and then we can have life. And it's hard because financial advisors, even though well-meaning, a lot of them are going to preach this concept, right? It's even if they don't want to, it's how they're compensated. Assets under management times a percentage is their fee every month. So they're like, bring me more money. And it does kind of make sense. You need some savings, but man, like, should we be accumulating as much as possible? And hearing this message, like, it doesn't make sense to me, and financially, you have to accumulate a heck of a lot. Like, I'm a numbers person, right? The number you have to put in there in the equation to accumulate and then coast, like hit the cliff and just glide for 20 years is huge. Okay. Huge. You have to burn all the ships to get there. Or you find something that you love doing that doesn't completely burn you out in life, that is sustainable, and you do that. And then when later in the years, when some people would say, no, I don't want to work, like, you just keep on doing that for 20 years or 20 hours a week or 10 hours a week. And it's amazing how the math smooths out and you are able to it's kind of like, pedaling a bike, like to build speed and then to coast for 20 miles. How fast do you have to get going? Like so fast. Or you could just every once in a while do a little pedal and it keeps you going. And that's the same with a little bit of income, even in those retirement years. You just find something that's sustainable, right? Like, and by then we should have an expertise where we're getting more per hour or whatever. And so it's like, can't we? And I don't have the perfect answer, but I do know the math. I'm the great experiment. I'm trying to make it work. In my mind, I'll catch up. I have full faith that I can catch up, whatever that means. If I'm looking at my numbers and understanding them and not overdrawing myself, I can catch up after my kids they don't need me. I have full faith in that. I'm putting all my cards that way, actually. Like I'm like, let's err on that side. What would that look like if I erred on that side? I know I'm not going to be living in a van down by the river. Okay. Like that's not who I am. And that's not who I'm but like we only have 2 toggles, complete freedom or living in a van down by the river. Like that's like on a yacht or in a van down by like that's like where we are at in society. And I'm like, holy cow. Like this is not either we're like because we see those commercials for like, all the big like Schwab, Fidelity, all these big firms, and it's always like experience freedom. And it's like everything is geared towards 65, like retirement age. And it's like, let's make some commercials. Idaho actually has an awesome commercial. When I moved here, it was like hit hard too. It was like, it's just called 18 Summers Campaign. So they say like, they just show outdoors and families doing stuff outdoors. And it's like 18 summers and just like mic drop. And it's like, oh, freak. Like I'm 12 through with my oldest on that. I'm like, yikes. Like, let's go camping, get your sleeping bag. And so, yeah, I just like, that is just such anyone that will give me an ear to be like, hey, I want more balance is a cliched word, but I want to do things different. How do I do it? Because I still have to worry about money. I get that, but I love this conversation. Like I have it with everyone who will listen, especially when I invite my buddies over for, to jump in the sauna. That's a captive audience. It's awesome. But if I can just, help breathe some hope and some excitement for this concept into dads, their kids, they get to pass a different legacy to their kids, because everyone's all about, oh, that's another excuse they use. I want to build this business because I want to have a legacy. I want to pass this on to my kids. And what are you really passing on to your kids? I think of that, like, I don't know, like the questions that you would ask your kids, like, are you, like on the money side? Let me ask you guys these things. Okay. And you don't have to answer them obviously, but a little bit of, what is it called? Hypothetical or, I don't know. Okay. So across the true income formula really quick, if you think about the word legacy, like what legacy am I passing on the money side? Would you be happy if your kids modeled your relationship with money? Did you show them calm or chaos, scarcity or stewardship? There's no number involved there, or like it's the vibe around money. Like that's what we're modeling for our kids. And if we are doing the model that looks normal to society, like that's what we're going to pass to the kids. Like that's a generational concept. Money is a generational thing. And so how we show up there, time, would you be proud if your kids manage time like you do? This is when they're grown up. So at 33 years old, right? Like if my kids were doing exactly what I was doing now, like, would I be like, good? Like, yeah, that's awesome. The health side, would you want your kids to treat their body and mind the way you have? Did you show them health is fuel or something to ignore? Relationships. Would you feel good if your kids nurtured relationships like you do? Were you available or always too busy? And then the stress one. Would you want your kids to carry stress like you carry it? Did you model resilience or burnout? And that's, I don't know, those are pretty scary questions. And I'm not trying to add more pressure to dads, but reality is legacy, right? Like, man, what are we really passing on to our kids?
Yeah.
It's just honest. Like, it's just factual. This is what's going to happen if we don't change, if we don't do it a little bit differently. And it doesn't have to be, there's no perfection in this process at all. And that's another thing. Like, how do we model to our kids working through hard equations in life.
Yeah.
Like, and why is it hard? And passing on the lessons, just like I got to learn from hundreds of clients over the years, they get to learn through us, our hardships, our struggles, you know, getting them involved a little bit and say, hey, this season dad's going to be doing a little bit extra, or, hey, notice this season I'm not going to be doing extra. Like, this is, I'm intentionally trying to do this in my life. This is what we're trying to do, you know. And we have this conversation because my daughter, 12 years old, is like, why don't we have a nice SUV like so-and-so? And why don't, she's at that point where she's like throwing those at us. Like, why don't we have a bigger house? Why don't, no. And so we're starting to have these conversations with her. We do things differently. This is what we try to optimize for. This is what we are, you know, this is why we have a kind of a stinky little van, you know, that we're not, you know, do you want more? It goes back. Do you want more of dad, or do you want a nice fancy car? Right. Like, we're trying to teach her those, and as much as possible to a 12-year-old, you know. But I do believe she's going to come out a little bit differently, hopefully. Like, and you know, like when she gets married, she's not going to have kind of unrealistic expectations and pressures that she'll put on her spouse to do X, Y, and Z. So it can be generational, these concepts.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to break them generationally, right? We all have stories that we've built around, especially around money, big trigger point for a lot of people. But I wish dads would just be more open with the money part, you know, like, talk about it. Don't, you know, like, cause we all, it's just such a closed book, you know, but find a good community where you can have trust and empathy and all those other things. And it's just like, hey, like, this is where I'm at, and people can challenge or support in different healthy ways. Like, gosh, we need that as dads so much, because we just carry that burden across all those metrics. Just, it's a very lonely place. Like, I'm a social guy, but I'm also oftentimes trying to build a community just with my buddies. Like, that's why that's why I have a sauna, honestly, because otherwise, like, you know, my wife and I will talk about it, but it's just different than talking with the guys, you know. So good. Like, and I have finished those sessions of, like, I come in and my wife's like, hey, who came and how was it? I'm like, oh, it's the best. So good, you know. So we have to find that support system, because this battle is one that you're fighting the whole freaking system on. Like, to be honest, like, the whole system is going to say you're unwise steward of if you do it this way.
Yeah. Well, as we kind of come up here on time, the hour went by quick. What is something what's some advice that you could give to a dad that is trying to break that norm? Just something like a first step, just to kind of start going into the direction of reverse retirement, or just having more of that freedom.
I would say the first step, it sounds funny, it's not tactical, it's actually the mental side of it. It's permission. You have to get okay. You have to get okay with the concept of doing things different. Like honestly, because otherwise it's a white knuckle approach, and it's gonna fall off and you're gonna have a difficulty implementing it. And so I think a good quote that I use often, that I kind of with my clients. So I try to use this as kind of like a stark, like, permission type of thing, because I had this one lady and her family, they inherited a few $1 million. And she was like, hey, Truman, I don't want to touch the principle of it or anything. Like, I'll just continue working in my business hard. And then that way I can leave my kids all of the money. And I was like, no. I was like, and I told her, I was like, your kids would rather have you now than your money later. Like, and she was like, I kind of offended her, to be honest. I was like, but I wish someone would have told my dad that. Give him permission, challenge what he was modeled and told, and was doing really, really well, which was get out there and provide on the money side, like, in a great way. But, like, man, your kids would rather have you now than your money later. That is a guiding principle that can mean a lot, and it can dictate a lot more action in life. And so that's what I would say to a dad who's like, dude, like, how do I do it? And it's like, well, first of all, you have to accept it. You know, what do you want? It's kind of asking, like, what are your values, you know? And it's like, if that rings true to you and you want to believe that, then it's like, okay, then your decisions are going to be a lot easier, because we're so conditioned to optimize for the money side that we have to have something that challenges that right off the bat. And I think that statement does that. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then, there always has to be a second follow-up. And I think, DJ, we talked about that, is like, you have to know your enough number, and enough is found both in the bank account and in the head. And enough has to be, if you're married, a couple number. Like, you guys have to understand what that is together. Like, there's got to be definitely like some money therapy going on, because gosh, that needs to be challenged. And then just don't self-sabotage yourself. You look around and all the stuff that you've accumulated to try to optimize your equation. It's like, what do you really need? Can I tell you a really quick story, like 2 minutes?
Yep.
In Hawaii, my brother-in-law, love the guy. So when we were there living in Hawaii, I was out on a wave runner with him out in the ocean, 11 o'clock in the morning. And I'm on kind of like vacation, right? But he's like, he lives in Hawaii, so he has to like live life in Hawaii. And we were out there, and it was just like awesome sun coming in, and I was just like, dude, you've got a good equation going on here, And he's like, what do you mean? And he's figured out ways to optimize, even though financially it's not this perfect, he doesn't have this super high paying job, and he hustles, and he's like a consultant here, and he does like, he kind of pieces the money part together, right? And a lot of people would say, oh, he's not optimizing very well. But man, he's got time to spend with those that he wants to spend it with. The health component, obviously, if you're doing stuff out in the ocean, that's healthy. Like, man, he loves the ocean. So his stress levels are lower. And so I'm like, man, how do I go back in my life and even do it better, And it gave me more permission. This is the world that I love to spend time in, but it gave me even more permission to like, how do I, my own little equation, And I just, everyone should have their own little equation, be like, how am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
How am I doing there? And get excited about it. I feel like that's a fun, I like to use my brain for that, because it's so complicated, but yeah. So anyways, long answer for the short question, but your kids want you now more than your money later. That's the words I try to leave with everyone I talk to, and just have them think about it differently, right? Because the algorithm will teach you otherwise. You have to come up with the different algorithms in your life if you're going to have a different result,
Mm-hmm.
And look to those who have about to pass away, what they're saying, and ask yourself, why do I feel guilty, or why do I feel pressure, like getting it even underneath those, stories that we've come up with, the stories that we've been taught as growing up. We have to challenge the status quo in a way, and just know that we're doing it for our kids. It's like, it is going to look weird, and it's saying no to the fancy. You just have to realize that's for, like, your kids will thank you for that later. Like, even if they say they don't, like I told you about my 12-year-old, like, they will. They're not old enough. Like, but like the fancy vacation, if it means dad's gone more to make it happen, or like you said, like Alec, like camping park, like they don't care when it really comes down to it, So that's my soapbox, guys. Hopefully that can, help a dad out there who's like, I want to do things differently for my kids.
For sure.
Challenge the status quo. Reverse retirement is just the concept I've kind of used, the words that I've always used over the years, is it kind of like, I'm trying to describe this to someone to challenge that status quo and be like, hey, let's use our creativity to figure out everyone's unique equation, right? Like, can you make it work? Can you make it work? Challenge that and say, maybe I can. Especially those business owners who are just, hustle. I'll build a business, then I'll sell it and it'll be worth a lot, and then I'll have time. And it's like, that. Ask every purchase, every decision around the money should always be filtered in your true income equation, always. Otherwise, it can cause more damage than good.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on. Just where can people find you if they want to look you up and kind of hear more?
Yeah, I would say just my website. I just have a simple little landing page, and that's probably a good place to start. Just trumanweston.com. Nothing's flashy, nothing super exciting. And I'm always trying to build the messaging around that. And so hopefully in the future, I'll have maybe a podcast or maybe a YouTube channel to kind of get this message out more. it's a time investment to do it like you guys have for sure. But it's fun to be able to, use your platform to maybe reach some dads to help them. But yeah, hopefully I'll have more time, make more time to write more of these thoughts down and to help people besides just I just find myself in my current client mix, in those circles doing it. But yeah, any way I can help, I'm here. So
awesome. Well, again, thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone listen, hope you guys got a lot from this, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. We love you guys. Later.